As clever as they are, a lot of the work that scientists do is guesswork. They might have a vague idea about what something is or how it works, and they develop a theory based on that idea. The theory then holds until someone proves them wrong. Scientists are to be admired, but they don't have universal answers for everything. All the things you're about to see in this video proved to be puzzling for the scientists that examined them. The old Hellfire Club in Dublin, Ireland, was always said to be haunted by those who spent any extended length of time there. In 2016, archaeologists might have found the cause of all those ghost stories. What was once thought to be a natural mound of earth on the land next to the club turned out to be a burial mound atop an ancient tomb, and the tomb runs directly beneath the Hellfire Club. Experts say that the burial is about 5,000 years old. Hellfire Club was built in 1725, and it now seems likely that its builders used stones from the passage tombs beneath the land without telling anybody. The roof collapsed shortly after the club was built, and thus began a long-lived local rumor that the building itself was evil. A mysterious fire forced the permanent abandonment of the club in the late 18th century, and a 250-year-old body clutching a statue of Satan was found buried on the grounds during the 1970s. The identity of the occupant of the original tomb remains unknown, but perhaps they took exception to their long rest being disturbed by the antics inside the club. Scientists and historians are slowly beginning to accept that Neanderthals were capable of far more than we've credited them with in the past. They've had to accept that because of discoveries like these ring structures inside the Brunnikel cave in France's Aveyron Valley. Based on the evidence at the scene, the artificial structures were created 176,000 years ago. That rules out early humans and leaves Neanderthals as the most likely candidates for their creation. The entrance to the cave was sealed up by a landslide thousands of years ago, but a 15-year-old boy spent the summer of 1990 clearing up the entrance because of sheer curiosity about what might be inside. To his amazement, he found broken stalagmites carefully arranged into two large rings, one 12 feet across and another 20 feet across. Piles of burnt animal bones were found within both rings. That means the Neanderthals were also capable of creating fire. The purpose of the rings will almost never be known, but they suggest at the very least that Neanderthals were capable of either abstract thought, ritualistic behavior, or both. In a very similar vein, our next incredible find is a 50,000-year-old needle that was found in a cave in Siberia in August 2016. Once again, archaeologists and scientists are positive that the needle wasn't made by Homo sapiens, which leaves us with very few alternative candidates. We're not looking at the Neanderthals this time, though. We're looking to the Denisovans, a mysterious human-like race who seem to have lived in and around Denisova Cave, but didn't spread to any other part of the world. There's no doubt that the needle is artificial. It even has a hole for a thread to be passed through it. It's made of animal bone, and it's officially the oldest sewing needle in the world. It's also one of the oldest Denisovan relics, as it's a full 10,000 years older than a polished piece of chlorite Denisovan jewelry that was found elsewhere in the cave a few years earlier. It's thought that the earliest Denisovans arrived at the cave around 170,000 years ago. Scientists aren't sure where they were before they reached the cave, and nor do they know what happened to them after they left. The freezing cold conditions at the bottom of the Baltic Sea are well suited to preserving anything that reaches such depths. That makes it a good place to go looking for shipwrecks, as a team of divers from Finland found out when they discovered this 17th century wreck in September 2020. The design of the ship is consistent with the type of trading vessel used extensively by Dutch merchants during that era. In the Netherlands, ships like these were called flutes. The wreck was found close to the mouth of the Gulf of Finland, not far from the easternmost point of the Baltic, at a depth of just under 300 feet. The ship is so well preserved that it ought to be possible to say what sank it, and therein lies the problem. There's no obvious visible damage to the ship that would have caused it to go under. In fact, the worst damage seems to be that done to the upper decks by trawlers passing above the wreck with their nets. The ship's hold is untouched and full of cargo, although none has yet been brought back to the surface. Of all the mummified human bodies in the world, there's none quite so unique as the Tollund Man. He's the most fascinating exhibit in Denmark's Musgard Museum, visited by thousands of people every year. You might not think he's too easy on the eyes, but we think he's not doing badly for a man who's 2,300 years old. The body is so well preserved that all of its skin and hair are still present, as are the fingernails. We can thank the peat bog that he spent most of the past 2 millennia inside for that. He was discovered by workmen digging for peat in 1952. Unsurprisingly, they were terrified by the sight of the body and ran away in fear. In truth, though, Tollund Man had more to fear from people than people did from him. Based on the markings on his body, it seems likely that he was ritually sacrificed before being thrown into the bog. Such practices were common back then, because the ancient residents of Denmark believed that bogs served as portals to the gods and the underworld. By sacrificing this man, they hoped they'd incur the favor of the gods, who would bless their efforts to obtain iron ore. If there weren't so many historical accounts from people who saw Greek fire with their own eyes, we probably wouldn't believe it ever existed. Even today, our best scientists aren't sure of its precise recipe. By all accounts, the use of Greek fire is what won a war for the Byzantine Empire in the year 673 at Constantinople. The flames are said to have traveled across the water itself, leaping from ship to ship. All of the Byzantine Empire's enemies tried and failed to make their own versions of Greek fire, and when the empire eventually fell, the secret was lost. Modern-day scientists have hypothesized that it involved a combination of phosphide, sulfur, and quicklime, but there would likely have been other ingredients, and we may never know what they were. Whatever went into the making of Greek fire, it was surely the mightiest weapon in the world at the time. Sailing a fleet out to face the Empire's armies was a risky thing to do if you knew that they could attack you with fire across the water. That's probably one of the reasons that the Empire lasted for as long as it did. The Sea of Galilee boat is sometimes referred to as the Jesus boat. There are those who believe that it might have belonged to and been used by Jesus Christ and his disciples, although there's no hard evidence of that. The boat was found on the shore of the Sea of Galilee in 1986 and dates to the 1st century. It might not have belonged to Jesus, but it existed when Jesus was alive and is of the type that he would have used for fishing. The boat is almost 30 feet long and only became visible because of a severe drought. When it was found, it was in such a delicate state that it had to be submerged in a wax bath for 12 years before it was stable enough to go on display to the public. It still contained a cooking pot and a lamp when it was discovered. Both artifacts have been tested and dated to between the years 50 BCE and 50 CE. There's evidence of repeated repair work being carried out on the boat, which suggests that it probably remained in use for several decades. Here's a fact that's almost impossible to comprehend. 1,200 years ago, the Chimu civilization of Peru invented a basic form of telephone. It's not exactly a smartphone, but it's capable of enabling spoken communication across short distances. The Chimu telephone was found in the ruins of Chanchan in late 2020 and is the only artifact of its kind ever to be found in the country. You might have made something similar to it when you were a child. The telephone is made of a pair of cups, connected by a 70-foot-long cotton twine string. We think the cord may have been run between two neighboring houses, or perhaps from one end of a large communal building to the other. Archaeologists can't decide whether it was thought of as a sophisticated device for the use of the elite, or whether it was a simple child's toy. We might never find that out because the Chimu had no written language, and so they didn't leave behind any records for us to consult. It's not the most high-tech phone you'll ever see, but it would have worked perfectly well. The sooner the ancient rulers of Cairo knew whether there was a flood or a drought coming, the sooner they could start planning for it. That, in a nutshell, is why they built the Nileometer. Looking at the impressive structure, you could easily believe it was a temple or a building of religious importance. And you could argue that it was. There was nothing in Cairo more important to the welfare of the city's people than this at the time it was built. The Nileometer you see in these images is the largest of three that still exist in the Egyptian capital. The stone steps that spiral down the sides of the marble column are there to allow priests to descend to the depths and check on the water level of the Nile. Only priests and the ruling elite were allowed to enter the Nileometer because the status of the Nile was considered to be privileged information 5,000 years ago. The information they gathered would be relayed to the pharaoh, who would then decide policies based on that information. They couldn't avoid a drought, but they could at least start stockpiling goods before the worst effects of one took hold. Not all of the fascinating ancient buildings in Athens, Greece are temples. Take the Tower of the Winds, for example. This 2,200-year-old structure is an ancient Greek weather station. In fact, experts are convinced that it was the first weather station in the world. The tower features a sundial, a weather vane, and a water clock. It's capable of measuring far more than wind, but its name comes from the 8 Greek gods of wind, one of whom appears on each of the marble tower's 8 faces. The faces of the sundials beneath the friezes have faded over time, but they're still just about visible and still work as the tower's builders intended. The weather vane, however, is mostly ruined. It once featured a bronze statue of Triton, a god of the seas, but he was lost long ago. When Christianity came to Greece, the Tower of the Winds was converted to a church, with the addition of a cemetery outside. It then became a place of worship for Sufi Muslim whirling dervishes during the Ottoman era. After that, it became abandoned, and until refurbishment and restoration work was carried out in the 1830s, so much debris had built up around its base that the tower was half buried. Amateur metal detectorist Buffy Bailey struck lucky in November 2021 when she found a tiny gold Bible in a farmer's field close to York, England. When we say tiny, we really mean it. The delicately engraved Bible is barely bigger than Buffy's fingernail. She immediately took her find to a museum, where professional archaeologists told her that it's around 600 years old and could be worth as much as £100,000. The artifact could only have been owned by someone of immense wealth, and we might know who. The field the Bible was found in is on land that once belonged to King Richard III, so Buffy's discovery might have a royal connection. The engravings on the visible surfaces of the Bible are representations of St. Margaret and St. Leonard, both of whom are patron saints of childbirth. That makes it likely that the item was given to an expectant woman in the hope that it would protect her during the birthing process. Historians have noted the similar style of this artifact to the Middleham jewel, which was found not far from here in a place also connected to Richard III. It may even have been made by the same artist. Many of our American viewers will have heard of Gungiwamp in Groton, Connecticut, but knowing it exists and understanding it are two different things. The entire site feels almost like it was designed to be a puzzle for archaeologists, with layers of artifacts piled up on top of each other, seemingly out of chronological order. Over the years, archaeologists have found artifacts from the colonial era inside Neolithic-era burial chambers, They've found stone rings on top of the colonial-era finds, and strange inscriptions etched into the stone that they've never been able to translate. The lack of clarity over who founded the site and when has led to some fantastical claims being made. One story even says that Gungiwamp was founded and settled by Celtic Christian monks who ran away from their Norse persecutors and made it to America during the 6th century. Experts have found direct evidence that the site was founded at least 3,500 years ago. The question of who by might never be answered. Archaeology and science can tell us quite a lot about the way our ancestors and forefathers lived, but not quite everything. While there's a good chance that an expert might be able to identify a new archaeological discovery, there are some finds that totally perplex them and leave them as mystified as the rest of us. This video is a celebration of those perplexing finds. It contains some amazing archaeological mysteries that have confounded the greatest minds on the planet. Our ancestors practiced many different funeral and burial customs all over the planet, and they vary drastically throughout the ages. We're nowhere near the point of understanding all of them, and we definitely don't understand this circular burial pit that was found in Mexico in 2018. The intertwined pile of bones contains 10 complete human skeletons that appear to have been deliberately fanned out to face in multiple different directions. The burial pit is in Ptalpan, which makes identification a little different. This is a place full of water, animals, and rich soil, which made it a valuable place for any Mesoamerican civilization to assert ownership of in the time before the Aztecs. Jimena River Escamilla, the first archaeologist to examine the site, says that the occupants of the grave range in age from 1 month to around 60 years, and there's no chance the bones came to be in this formation by accident. The head of one skeleton is placed on the chest of another, and the hands of another are placed on the back of that one. We don't know if this was meant as a form of tribute or as a way of mocking the dead. We tend to think of chemical weapons as a facet of modern warfare, and not a pleasant one. Recent archaeological discoveries suggest that we might have got that assessment wrong, though. There's evidence, perhaps even strong evidence, that chemical weapons were used 1,700 years ago in Syria as Persian forces attacked Roman soldiers at Dura Europos fortress. The evidence at the site shows that 20 soldiers met their doom in a single tunnel that was about 40 feet wide, but only 6 feet high. It appears that a sulfur and bitumen compound was pumped into the tunnel using bellows, which would have created a poisonous gas and rendered the soldiers unconscious within a small number of seconds. Unable to move or free themselves, the end would have followed a few minutes later. The compound was probably created by adding burnt bitumen and sulfur to fire, but the presence of the remains of a Persian close to the Roman soldiers implies that the person who set the fire may not have survived the event. Our only solid evidence for any of this, though, is the existence of mineral residue close to the bodies. Did the Persians use chemical weapons 1,700 years ago? Probably, but we can't prove it. The embalming process that was carried out prior to the mummification of bodies in ancient Egypt was always performed posthumously. Why then are there so many recorded cases of mummies that appear to be screaming in terror, with their mouths wide open? One of the best known examples of the phenomenon is a female body that was said for years to have been embalmed while still alive, crying in terror. Her pose fits that description. Her mouth is wide open, and her head is tilted back. Writing on the linen wrapped around the mummy identifies her as a princess and the royal sister of Merida. A recent CT scan suggests that she may have died of a heart attack, which might explain the pained expression, but doesn't explain why it wasn't fixed by the embalmers as most other mummies are. There's also another notorious screaming mummy, this time a male, who has recently been identified as Pentaware, a son of the famous pharaoh King Ramses III. Ancient records tell us that he was forced to hang himself as punishment for conspiring to murder his father. As further punishment, he wasn't embalmed, and instead was wrapped in sheepskin. His screaming skull is probably down to nothing more sinister than rigor mortis, but again, we don't know for sure. The so-called Moki marbles of Utah, USA have long been a source of fascination for the people who live in the area. The name Moki comes from the ancient language of the Native American Hopi Indians, where it meant dearly departed one. It stems from their belief that the spirits of the dead returned to the earth at night, but left when the sun rose, leaving behind the marbles as a message to their loved ones that they were happy and well in the afterlife. In reality, it's more likely that they were formed as ironstone concretions around 25 million years ago, the product of groundwater flowing through permeable rock and setting off a chain of chemical reactions, eventually triggering minerals to precipitate and forming layers around the iron cores of each ball, or marble. Over the passing of millions of years, the sandstone layers around the marbles were weathered away, exposing the concretions and leaving them gathered together on the desert floor. The majority of them are now in Native American reservations, where picking them up and taking them home is a criminal offense. They bear a striking resemblance to the Martian blueberries found on Mars by the NASA exploration rover Opportunity in 2004, and may have been formed the same way. The human brain is a very delicate organ, and its physical form doesn't survive for very long after death. When we come across our ancient ancestors' remains, all that's usually left of them are their skeletons. Even in comparatively well-preserved bodies like Egyptian mummies, the brain has usually decomposed in its entirety. That isn't the case with this 2,500-year-old human brain from England, which was found in York in 2008 inside a decapitated human skull. There's no scientific evidence of any deliberate attempt to preserve it, so the most popular theory among scientists is that the head was thrown into a thick clay pit almost immediately after decapitation, thus accidentally preserving its softer contents. This is far from the only set of human remains to have been found in a clay pit though, and none of the others managed to hold on to their brains for so long. There was, and perhaps still is, something happening with this brain that scientists don't understand, and 12 years of studying it hasn't gotten them any closer to the truth. The infamous Copper Scroll was among the last of the Dead Sea Scrolls to be discovered at Khirbet Qumran, Israel in 1952, and is by far the most mysterious of all of them. Every other scroll was written either on parchment or papyrus. This one is written on thin plates of copper, and isn't a literary work like the rest of them. Instead, it lists a treasure collection and contains clues as to where the treasure might be found. While it's written in Hebrew, it's a different form of Hebrew than that found on the other scrolls, too. Normally, with so much differentiation, it would be tempting to write it off as a fake, but there's little doubt that this is a genuine ancient artifact. It was written during the 1st century and carefully hidden away behind a collection of 40 jars. If this is the work of a prankster, it was a very clever and ancient prankster. None of the treasures listed on the scroll have ever been discovered. Toward the end of the text is a promise that a separate scroll contains more precise details. But if such a scroll exists, that's never been found either. To the untrained eye, the Clava Cairns of Scotland is an ancient burial ground, much like many of the others that are dotted around Europe. However, to the trained eye, there's a mystery to them that the world's best historians and archaeologists have been unable to solve. All evidence points to the fact that this cemetery was created during the Bronze Age. It welcomed its first permanent occupants approximately 4,000 years ago, and its last ones about 3,000 years ago. That's a period of 1,000 years of use, and yet we don't have the slightest idea about who created it and who's buried here. If we understood the carvings that have been left in the stones at the site, we might have a better idea. But unfortunately, we don't. Someone went to a great deal of trouble to etch indentations, lines, and cut marks into the stone, but their significance is lost to time. The people of the era wouldn't have had any form of written language, but these marks must have meant something to somebody. While we're on the topic of mysterious ancient graves, Hal Salfieni Hypogeum in Malta is well worthy of mention. There are over 7,000 people buried within the hypogeum, which would make it a notable mass grave under any circumstances. But the presence of so many sets of human remains is only part of the story, one we'll get to in a moment. For now, focus on the extraordinary beauty of the building, made 6,000 years ago, and now buried a whole 30 feet below modern Malta. Nobody knew it was here at all until construction workers attempted to install a water cistern in 1902 and broke into it by accident. The hypogeum is carved into the natural limestone deposits and sweeps and curves elegantly until we reach the third layer and the final chamber, a chamber that appears to have been engineered by someone who had an impossible knowledge of infrasound technology. Any sound made within the chamber echoes and resonates through the whole chamber, and can even interfere with the human brain's emotional state. Stranger still, the examination of the human remains showed that the people buried here had elongated skulls, and that the shape was a natural phenomenon, as opposed to a process undertaken after birth. We don't know who they were, or how they built this incredible sound chamber. You've heard of the Great Wall of China, and you should have heard of the Khatt Shebib Wall of Jordan, but you probably haven't. Scientists and archaeologists seem to be reluctant to talk about the wall, which might have something to do with the fact that they find it so difficult to understand. It runs on for more than 90 miles through an otherwise featureless stretch of the Jordanian desert, and it's been standing there for at least 2,000 years. That's despite the fact that it doesn't seem to have a purpose in either ancient or modern times. The wall went completely unnoticed until 1948, when a British diplomat spotted it out of the window of their plane and asked their interpreter what it was. That prompted an archaeological examination of the wall and the surrounding area, which revealed that it was built around nothing. There's no settlement here, and there never has been. It's too short to be a defensive wall, so it wasn't part of a fortification. There's no sign of any agricultural land use, so it wasn't an agricultural wall either. Why did someone build a nearly 100-mile-long wall for no reason in the middle of the desert? Pumapunku in Bolivia was a favorite site of the Inca. To them, it was the most beautiful place on Earth, and also the place that all life originated from, according to their creation myth. They didn't build the stone megaliths here, though. They were already present when the Inca arrived. The stones have been standing for 3,000 years, and yet they've been cut and assembled together using methods that totally elude our detection. We'd be capable of recreating them today, but we'd have to use the very latest stone cutting and construction technology to do it. How these ancient builders, using only their hands and ancient tools, were capable of achieving a work of this brilliance is a total mystery. There isn't a single chisel mark to be seen anywhere, and the boreholes that allow water to drain through the rock are so smooth that it's as if they were created with a modern power drill. Each stone intersects so perfectly that even driving the point of a needle between them would be impossible. Building Pumapunku was clearly both a feat of engineering and a labor of love, and yet we don't know who to thank for it. Many people have wrestled with the theory that our human race wasn't the first advanced species to live on Earth, and that someone or something else might have come before us. Such theories are backed up by discoveries like this one from the Ural Mountains. It's a collection of tiny coils found close to the banks of the Narada, Balbanyu, and Kolchim rivers in Russia in 1991, and every test performed on them suggests that they're at least 300,000 years old. Most of them are made of copper, while others are made from tungsten and molybdenum. The largest of the coils is around an inch in size, whereas the smallest are less than 1/10,000th of an inch. All of them have clearly been manufactured, and so we're forced to ask the difficult question of whether there was a species with knowledge of nanotechnology living on Earth 300,000 years ago. When the results of the first tests on the coils in St. Petersburg provided such alarming results, they were sent for further tests in Moscow, and then even more tests in Helsinki. They all came back with the same age and the same conclusion. They're genuine, and they represent a huge historical problem that scientists can't explain. The so-called troughs or sword marking of Gotland are such a subtle mystery that they went unnoticed for years. You'll find lines carved into stones all over the island, and for decades it was assumed that they represented nothing more interesting than places where warriors sharpened their swords. After their initial discovery in the 19th century, they were even officially named sharpening stones. It took until the 20th century for someone to point out that no ancient swords have ever been discovered on Gotland. And even if there had been, there's no known type of ancient sword that would leave such wide grooves in the stone. At that point, a new idea was posited. Instead of being marks made by sharpening swords, each of these stones might be a primitive type of calendar, with which the travel of the sun and moon through the sky could be measured and charted. To back up this theory, every time an example of a sharpening stone has been found on the edge of a rocky outcrop, it's always at the outermost point and facing toward the sky. This too could be wrong though, and the stones might have another, as yet unexplained significance. Every archaeologist loves making historically significant discoveries, but there are some discoveries that just can't be explained. Perhaps they're too big or too small. Maybe they're in the wrong place or appear to be in the wrong time. Whatever the reason, they simply don't fit and are puzzling by their very nature. Let's enjoy a few of those puzzles together now. Despite what we just said, you don't have to be an archaeologist or a treasure hunter to come across something remarkable from the distant past. In October 2022, a beet farmer tending his fields in Opava, Czechia, was stunned to discover a unique Bronze Age-era gold belt in a field he'd worked hundreds of times before. The belt was crumpled into a ball when he found it, but he thought enough of it to take it indoors, rinse it, and straighten it out a little. Professional archaeologists would probably rather that he hadn't tampered with it so much, but they can at least see that it's a remarkable find. The belt has been analyzed in the Silesian Regional Museum and has been determined to be made of 84% gold, 15% silver, and trace elements of copper and other metals. The decorative style of the diadem has been used to determine a date range for the artifact, which begins in 1400 BCE and ends in 800 BCE. While experts now mostly agree that the object is a belt, the object is so thin and delicate that it was initially thought to be a tiara. The Aegean coastal town of Assos in Turkey has turned up quite a few noteworthy archaeological finds in the past few years. And so it proved to be the case yet again in October 2022, when this terracotta whistle was discovered in the grave of a child. Based on the proportions of the whistle, it's clear that it was made for the child, and most likely buried with them because it was a treasured personal possession. Early indications are that the artifact was made during the Roman era. Remarkably, for something of such great age, the whistle is still in excellent condition. It's still visibly stylized into the shape of a bird, and if it were to be placed to the lips, it would likely still whistle. Obviously, archaeologists haven't taken the risk of actually trying to play such a delicate and ancient object. Their discovery was made on the grounds of the Ayasma Church, which is sadly home to numerous child burials. Whistles like this one have been found at this site before, which makes historians wonder whether they were a popular child's toy 2,000 years ago in Turkey, or whether there was a significance to placing the items in the graves. Speaking of burials and tombs, a whole 10 ancient Etruscan tombs were found in the necropolis of Monterozzi, close to Tarquinia in Italy in October 2022. Experts say that the tombs date to the Villanovan and Archaic eras of more than 2,500 years ago, but unfortunately, they were looted centuries ago, and most of their valuables were taken. Tomb raiders didn't care much for ceramics back then, though, so they only took precious metals. That's why so many of the funerary objects, ceramics, and jars are still inside the tombs. Unusually for grave robbers, The thieves resealed the tombs after they left, having broken the original nephrite slabs to get in. Perhaps they were superstitious. The best of the painted vessels left behind are fine examples of the geometric Etruscan style. Some of them have been identified as the work of an anonymous but highly reputable ancient Etruscan artist, known only as the Painter of the Palms. Sadly, the thieves broke many of them in the hope of finding something valuable inside them, but all of the shattered fragments are still there and can be put back together. It'll be slow work, but it'll be worth it. Marcus Aurelius is recognized by historians as one of the greatest Roman emperors of them all. He became emperor in the year 161 and remained in charge of the empire until he passed away 19 years later in 180. If you're a film fan, you might recall seeing him played on the big screen by the legendary Richard Harris in the Oscar-winning movie Gladiator. It was customary for Roman emperors to have enormous statues of themselves built to watch over important buildings, and so it proved to be the case when the Roman baths of Sagalassos in Turkey were built. Unfortunately, the baths were almost completely destroyed by an earthquake in the 6th century. It took archaeologists more than a decade to comb through the site of the baths after rediscovering them in the early 21st century, and the most significant thing they found there was an enormous shattered marble statue of Marcus Aurelius. Much of the statue is missing. All the archaeologists could find were his head, lower legs, and right arm. What happened to the rest of it is unknown, as theoretically, everything that was destroyed by the earthquake should still be at the site, even if it's in pieces. It's a grim reality for archaeologists that they'll spend a lot of their professional lives confronted by death, by which we mean they'll often come across human remains. In October 2022, archaeologists in Luchau, Germany, came across the oldest human remains ever found in the country. To be more specific, what they found was a cremation grave in the Duvensee Bog, which is a prehistoric inland lake. The location is already very well known to archaeologists, as it contains over 20 Neolithic and Mesolithic sites. As is often the case with ancient bogs, Duvensee's anaerobic conditions mean that organic remains are preserved in a way that would never be possible if they were buried in regular earth. In this case, it seems the remains have been preserved for something like 10,500 years. It's thought the buried individual was a member of the hunter-gatherer-fisher people who lived in Europe during the early Mesolithic period, about whom virtually nothing is known. It's thought to have been very rare for them to ceremonially bury their dead, though, which makes us wonder whether this person was special. There are some places where you might reasonably expect to find an ancient burial ground, and there are places where you absolutely wouldn't. Finding one underneath a disused department store in Haverfordwest, Wales, falls into the latter category. Archaeologists were investigating what lay below the former Aki White building in the town when they found what they now believe to be the remains of a medieval-era priory called St. Saviour's, which was founded by an order of Dominican monks in 1256. This is a discovery that was first reported on October 11, 2022. Work was still ongoing at the site as of early 2023, and new discoveries were still being made. Thus far, archaeologists have identified the dormitories, scriptoriums, stables, and hospitals of the old priory, but they're puzzled by the graveyard. Rather than being full of monks, it's full of people from all walks of life and all ages, including children. Some of those buried here have head wounds of the kind that would be caused by arrows or musket balls in battle. One theory is that people who died in a nearby battle were brought to the priory for burial as an emergency measure, but historians are unaware of any such battle from this era. The ancient Chimu people of Peru were advanced in some ways, but positively brutal and savage in others. As an example, they practiced human sacrifice, and some of the people they sacrificed were children. In October 2022, archaeologists found the remains of 76 sacrificed children at a Chimu Empire site called Pampa La Cruz in Huanchacao, which is a beach tourism destination in Peru. Each child had a clear transversal cut across its sternum, thus proving that the rib cages were opened so their hearts could be extracted. The extraction of the heart was the climax of the Chimu human sacrificial ritual. The Chimu established Huanchaco during the 9th century, and it remained in their bloody hands until they were driven from the area by the Inca in 1470. It's thought that Huanchaco must have been a place of great religious significance to the Chimu, as more human sacrifices have been recorded here than at any other known Chimu site in the country. In this case, historians think the sacrifices were organized to consecrate a new irrigation system in the fields directly opposite the site of the act. During the summer of 2022, archaeologists working at a site in Mexico set about the task of attempting to uncover and rediscover what they thought was an image of the Virgin Mary. Long before they'd even finished their work, it was apparent that what they were looking at had nothing to do with Catholicism. Instead, this is a 16th century pre-Hispanic mural depicting the rabbit god Tepoztecatl, the Aztec deity of alcohol and drunkenness. The surprising discovery was made at the Convent of the Nativity in Tepoztlan City, Morelos, which was built between 1555 and 1580. With the benefit of hindsight, the archaeologists should have realized something was amiss earlier. The Virgin Mary has never been painted with feather plumes or red shields, and both of these details were visible even before the attempt to reveal the painting began. The big puzzle here for archaeologists is why these Aztec murals were left in place after the convent was adopted by Christians. The entire convent is dedicated to the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin, so why would its earliest occupants have tolerated the presence of what they'd surely have perceived to be a false idol on their walls? King Władysław the Elbow High is known to historians in Poland for unifying the country under a single crown during the 14th century. He's also known for being very short, hence his unflattering nickname. The people of his time nicknamed him Loki Tekta, which is a reference to a Polish unit of measurement equivalent to about 18 inches. Was he really that small? Actually, no. In October 2022, experts probed his tomb in Wawel Cathedral in Krakow using cameras. Inside the burial, the camera spotted a set of human remains in good condition, clad in regal dark blue robes, and with a royal scepter laid diagonally across his chest. The view obtained by the camera allowed scientists to estimate the height of the king within a margin of error of no more than 3 inches. With that in mind, they believe that King Władysław the Elbow High was approximately 5 feet tall. The average height for men during his lifetime was about 5 feet and 5 inches tall. He was shorter than the average man, but not as drastically as his nickname has made us believe for the past 700 years. Have you ever wondered what an ancient ritual wash basin might look like? Well, wonder no longer. Here's one that was found during excavations in the ancient Greek city of Klazomenai in September 2022. What's left of the city is now in Ural, which is close to Izmir in western Turkey. To give this wash basin its correct name, it should be called a perirhanterion. Painted onto its sides are depictions of chariot races and mythological figures in a very busy scene. According to experts, the wash basin is around 2,600 years old. As busy as the main scene on its sides is, the borders around it are even busier. They contain more chariots, sphinxes, and sirens surrounding a cylindrical base. While this is an amazing artifact, we shouldn't pretend that it's typical of the ritual wash basins of the time. In fact, no other examples of any similar artifact as elaborately decorated as this one have ever been found. It would originally have been placed inside a temple and used for ritual purification, but the extensive decorations on this one might mean it had a more specific and grander function. The ancient Roman fort of Vindolanda is one of the most significant archaeological sites in the United Kingdom, and discoveries like this one are the reason why. It's a Cornu mouthpiece, and it's extremely rare. The copper alloy artifact, which was once part of a musical instrument and was made somewhere between the years 120 and 128, was found buried beneath the floor of a Hadrianic workshop. Back when it was in one piece, the instrument would have been carried by a special military hornblower called a cornison. Their job was to encode orders from their general into musical notes, and then play them over the battlefield as instructions to their colleagues. It's quite common to see depictions of cornua in Roman works of art and sculptures, including on Trajan's column in Rome. But finding part of the actual instrument happens far less often. No fewer than 9 different Roman forts were built at Vindolanda between the years 85 and 370, each one built atop the last one, making it a challenging but rewarding site to work at for archaeologists. Excavations at the site of Zhangshao Shang City Archaeological Park in Zhangshao, Henan Province, China, have been ongoing for some time, and are likely to keep ongoing for several years, especially if archaeologists there keep finding artifacts like this gold mask. With an estimated age of more than 3,000 years, which dates it to the time of the Shang Dynasty, it's even older than another recently discovered ancient gold funerary mask, which was found in the Shanqingdui sacrificial pit in 2021. This new mask came from a tomb inside a cemetery in the southeast corner of the enormous archaeological site, and is one of more than 200 objects found within the tomb, which appears to be that of a nobleman. The colossal tomb is about the size of a New York City block, covering 10,000 square meters. While the mask is mostly featureless, it's large enough to cover a whole adult face, and would have been designed to serve a specific purpose. The people of the Shang Dynasty era believed that gold granted protection to the body and prevented the spirit from being scattered upon decomposition, so decorating the mask would never have been the intention or the point. Sometimes history can be a mystery, and we're not just saying that because it's a cool little rhyme. There's no such thing as a complete guide to the past, so we can't always be sure why our ancient ancestors did some of the things that they did, or made some of the things that they made. The ancient artifacts in this video are real head-scratchers. The discovery of one-horned animal representations in rock art in South Africa's Eastern Cape has sparked interest and speculation about the existence of unicorns or similar mythical creatures in African lore. Despite initial doubts, new research suggests these aren't mere depictions of real-life animals like the oryx or rhino viewed in profile, but are deeply rooted in indigenous San beliefs. These mythical beings, often portrayed in rock art, hold significant cultural value, embodying aspects of weather and nature integral to San rituals and stories. These one-horned figures, described in San myths as rain animals, are now understood to be more than just artistic impressions or mistaken observations. They embody a rich tapestry of indigenous mythology, intertwined with natural phenomena and cultural rites. This intriguing overlap between indigenous beliefs and colonial interpretations of the European unicorn myth highlights a complex cultural exchange that has masked the original significance of these unique rock art depictions. The recognition of these figures as representations of mythical rain animals rather than misrepresented real creatures provides a fascinating insight into the cultural and spiritual world of the San people, and challenges previous misconceptions of African rock art. A recent study suggests that humans have been creating phallic artwork for at least 42,000 years. The evidence comes from a granite pendant discovered in the Khangai Mountains of northern Mongolia in 2016, which bears a striking resemblance to a penis. The pendant measures approximately 1.7 inches long, 0.8 inches wide, and 0.5 inches thick. Its small size suggests that it was likely a personal ornament, possibly serving as a good luck charm or a fertility symbol. Radiocarbon dating of nearby organic material indicates that the pendant was crafted between 42,400 and 41,900 years ago, making it the earliest known sexed anthropomorphic representation, according to the researchers. The pendant's design, featuring a long neck, a stubby head, and a clear groove at the tip, believed to represent the urethra, supports this interpretation. However, some researchers have expressed uncertainty about whether the pendant truly depicts a penis. If the researchers' interpretation is correct, it would mean that one of the first things prehistoric humans decided to artistically represent was the male genitalia. We guess some things never change, no matter how many thousands of years pass. Dutch archaeologists have made a thrilling discovery, unearthing a site dating back about 4,000 years, which has been dubbed the Stonehenge of the Netherlands. This ancient religious site, found in the town of Tiel, features a significant burial mound designed as a solar calendar, marking the sun's path on the longest and shortest days of the year. Containing the remains of roughly 60 individuals, this mound, about 65 feet in diameter, showcases a profound understanding of celestial movements similar to the famed Stonehenge in Britain. What sets this discovery apart is not just its age, but the extensive use of the site as a burial ground for approximately 800 years. Adding to the intrigue, archaeologists unearthed a single glass bead within one of the graves, traced back to Mesopotamia, indicating a vast network of trade or exchange covering nearly 3,100 miles. This bead represents a tangible link to the distant past, showing that even 4,000 years ago, there were connections spanning continents. The presence of such an item from far-off lands in a Dutch burial mound illustrates the complex web of trade and cultural exchange that existed even in ancient times. In another remarkable find, a new moai statue has been unearthed in the depths of a dried-up laguna within the crater of Easter Island's Rano Raraku volcano. This discovery, a first of its kind, presents exciting prospects for scientific and natural investigations. The statue, standing at just over 5 feet tall, was spotted by a team of dedicated volunteers from Chilean universities, who were engaged in a project to revive the marshlands within the volcano's crater. What makes this discovery even more intriguing is the location, the laguna, which had been 10 feet deep for centuries, making it seemingly impossible for humans to have placed the moai there in recent history. The moai, with its elongated features and distinct form, lies in the heart of this dried-up laguna, gazing skyward. While there are discussions about further study, there are currently no plans to relocate the statue, as the indigenous Rapa Nui community, who have inhabited Easter Island for generations, wishes for it to remain undisturbed. This discovery not only sheds light on the island's rich history, but also underscores the importance of preserving its cultural heritage. The Royal Jade Kong, a treasure from the Liangshu culture discovered in 1986, is not just any old piece of jade. This artifact stands out for its immense size and intricate craftsmanship. Standing nearly 3.5 inches tall and weighing about 14 pounds, this Jade Kong was found in a tomb that can only be described as an archaeological treasure trove, complete with 641 other jades and numerous beads and flakes. What makes the Royal Jade Kong particularly fascinating is the complex design etched onto its sides, a mix of semi-human and animal imagery that has sparked numerous interpretations among scholars. These designs are not just for show. They carry with them deep cultural significance, believed to represent power, status, and the mystical bridge between humanity and the supernatural. Despite the beauty and intrigue of the Royal Jade Kong, its true purpose remains a mystery, shrouded in the mists of time. While some experts propose that the Kong was a tool for spiritual communication, others see it as a symbol of political power or a marker of social status. This ambiguity adds to the Kong's allure, inviting us to ponder the beliefs and rituals of an ancient civilization long gone. If you could travel back in time to ancient Vietnam, you might hear the soothing strains of a unique musical instrument unlike any other found in Southeast Asia. Recently, archaeologists unearthed a deer antler along the Mekong River, believed to be about 2,000 years old, which may well represent one of the region's earliest stringed instruments. It's a 13-inch long deer antler, crafted with meticulous care, featuring a hole at one end for tuning and a bridge that would have supported a single resonant string. This discovery, linking directly to Vietnam's rich Preoc Eo culture, sheds light on a transformative era in musical evolution. From the stone percussion of lithophones to the nuanced symphony of modern instruments, researchers suggest that this ancient antler potentially influenced the design of contemporary instruments like the kni, a single-stringed bowed instrument played with the mouth. This research not only uncovers a piece of the musical puzzle lost to time, but also adds depth to our understanding of Vietnam's cultural heritage. It's a fascinating glimpse into how, thousands of years ago, music could have filled the air, enriching the lives of ancient communities along the mighty Mekong River. The 15th century shipwreck of the Gribshunden, once belonging to the Danish king Hans, has revealed a treasure trove of spices and plant material, laying bare the sophisticated trade networks and the luxurious lifestyle of Nordic royalty. From the chilly waters off the coast of Sweden, researchers have retrieved over 3,000 well-preserved plant specimens, including exotic spices like nutmeg, cloves, and saffron, originating from lands as distant as Indonesia. This discovery suggests King Hans was not only a ruler with grand ambitions, but also a man with a taste for the finer things in life, from aromatic spices to dried berries, showcasing the global connections and culinary sophistication of the time. The condition of these artifacts is remarkable, preserved by the Baltic Sea's unique cold and brackish waters. These findings are not just about the spices themselves, but also offer a glimpse into the everyday lives and health practices of people from centuries ago, with plants like henbane hinting at medicinal uses. The wreck of the Gribshunden provides a fascinating snapshot of 15th century life, illustrating the complexity of early trade routes and the diverse diet of the European elite, all while adding a spicy chapter to the history of Nordic exploration. Here's a discovery that challenges almost everything we think we know about human history. It's a collection of obsidian hand axes in Melka Kuntur, Ethiopia. In fact, it's such a large collection of obsidian hand axes that archaeologists believe that this location mass-produced the tools. The problem for historians is that the hand axes appear to be 1.2 million years old. That's 500,000 years before our ancient ancestors are thought to have developed the capability for mass production of tools on this scale. There are older hand axes in the world, including some which are 3.3 million years old. But the complexity of this site has astounded experts. There are more than 600 axes at the site, which has been named Simbiro 3, and there is a high likelihood of more being discovered in the near future. This is the work of an as-yet unknown group of hominids. It's likely that they had an accumulation of obsidian cobbles thanks to a combination of a meandering river and a nearby volcano. But that alone doesn't explain how they managed to produce tools on an industrial scale, or why the idea even occurred to them. In the scenic realms of North Yorkshire, England, archaeologists have unveiled the secrets of Stone Age hunter-gatherers, challenging our preconceived notions of prehistoric life. The recent excavations have unearthed a settlement from about 10,500 years ago, remarkably well preserved under layers of peat. This Mesolithic site, once perched on the shore of an ancient island lake, provides a rare glimpse into a society that was not merely surviving, but thriving. The artifacts found, from decorated hunting tools made of bone and antler to evidence of intricate woodworking, suggest a community deeply connected with and understanding their environment. This discovery paints a picture of early Britons who were far from the nomadic, precarious existence often associated with prehistoric people. Instead, these communities inhabited a rich, diverse landscape with confidence and stability, evidenced by their careful disposal of animal remains and ceremonial handling of hunting implements. This new perspective challenges the traditional narrative, suggesting a complex, settled lifestyle rich in cultural practices long before the advent of agriculture. As research continues, we're poised to learn even more about how these ancient peoples shaped and were shaped by the world around them. A recent study has transformed our understanding of Neanderthals, revealing that they might have been much more sophisticated than previously thought. Researchers in Spain have unearthed shells estimated to be 50,000 years old, adorned with holes and painted with orange pigment, suggesting that these ancient beings wore them as decorative ornaments. Furthermore, they discovered evidence of what can only be described as glitter makeup, a concoction of shiny granular substances mixed with pigments, suggesting Neanderthals engaged in body ornamentation and cosmetic practices. This discovery challenges the old notion that Neanderthals were merely brutish cave dwellers, instead highlighting their capacity for symbolic thinking and social expression. The artifacts predate the arrival of modern humans in Europe, debunking theories that Neanderthals could have acquired these items from Homo sapiens leftovers. Instead, the use of body ornaments and cosmetics points to a complex network of social relations and identity expression among Neanderthals. This new perspective positions Neanderthals closer to Homo sapiens in terms of cultural sophistication, suggesting that they too used symbolism and aesthetics to navigate their social worlds, and perhaps to forge connections with others within their communities. During excavations for London's new sewers in England, a medieval skeleton wearing a pair of thigh-high leather boots was discovered at the Chambers Wharf site in Bermondsey. The skeleton, believed to be from the late 15th century, was found face down in the mud, leading archaeologists to speculate that the man may have died while working near the river, and was quickly covered by mud after falling or drowning. The boots, which were an expensive item typically passed on to others rather than discarded after death, extended to the thigh, suggesting they served as waders rather than any fashion-related purpose. This indicates that the man could have been a fisherman, mudlark, or sailor. The man, likely under 35, had lived a hard life, suffering from osteoarthritis. Deep grooves found on his teeth could have been caused by a repetitive action, such as passing rope between them, a common practice among fishermen. The discovery, made during work on the 15-mile Thames Tideway Tunnel, is considered a rare and fascinating find by Mola Headland Infrastructure, the consortium carrying out the excavations. It's likely that more will be found as this project continues. In an intriguing project at the Temple of Isis in Philae, Egypt, researchers from Simon Fraser University are pioneering the use of modern 3D recording techniques to document 2,000 years of ancient graffiti. This graffiti, inscribed by diverse cultures over centuries, provides a rare glimpse into the everyday lives of those outside the echelons of power and health in ancient Egypt. The team employs advanced technologies like photogrammetry, laser scanning, and raking light to capture these historical etchings in unprecedented detail, moving beyond traditional two-dimensional photography and hand drawings that fail to capture the dynamism and complexity of the site. This project not only revolutionizes how archaeologists study ancient inscriptions, but also enhances our understanding of historical societies. By creating detailed three-dimensional images of the temple and its inscriptions, researchers can now explore the relationship between individual graffiti, their surrounding context, and the temple's architecture from angles previously inaccessible. This novel approach to archaeology, championed by Professor Nick Headley and his team, could significantly alter the way we interpret and analyze historical spaces, offering a more nuanced and comprehensive view of our past. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!